Excuse me, mic check 1, 2, 3.
Good to go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 193. I'm here, with my co-facilitator, Lionel.
Hello, everyone. How you all doing today? How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing good, brother. Yourself?
I am well.
All right. Hit that like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. There's a docket and description beneath the video. You can follow along with us. Complex Design, what's going on? Lando, what's going on? Just BU TV, how are you doing? Good evening. Richard Dixon, what's going on? And we will get started. So, first item on the docket is from Enterprise AI .news. Dell EMC's powerhouse machine learning server up to 10 GPUs. Dell EMC has launched a thoroughbred machine learning server for the data center and at the edge. It's most powerful in the company's line of AI servers with 4, 8, or 10 NVIDIA Tesla V100 GPUs, 14 single precision teraflops or 112 mixed precision AI teraflops per processor, and up to 8 NVMe local storage drives, basically non-volatile storage. In short, a lot of data, a lot of power. Announced this morning on Monday at Dell Technologies World, the Dell EMC DSS 8440 is a two-socket, four-use server designed for machine learning applications and other demanding workloads. The server isn't for machine learning rookies. It's built for organizations whose AI journeys have proceeded to the point of using more sophisticated, complex models, utilizing greater amounts of data for each faster training and quicker training iterations is critical. Most people starting AI don't need 8 GPUs, said Dell EMC senior quality engineer David Himalaya, Mayer. Sorry. At a pre-announcement event yesterday in Las Vegas, it's an extremely powerful box, but it's not a starting point. Depending on where customers are on their journey, if they are trying to understand where machine learning will help them, there are a variety of products, servers, and accelerators that a customer can deploy. So basically, um, what they have done with this server is they basically designed it um, as a turnkey solution for machine learning and artificial intelligence. And it's not just that it can do artificial intelligence and machine learning. What it can do is crack um, is actually work on for cryptocurrency mining. So there's a whole lot of things that can come out of this. And when Dell sells a product, or any company sells a product like this, that means it's going to be reliable. They're not putting it out there for nothing. They know that there's a market for this, and a lot of companies are starting to make their transition from servers that they probably bought in 2014, 2015, and they're looking at that 2020 date to start doing their asset inventory, and this is going to come up.
It's interesting that these this specific product is geared toward this new revolution that's coming in: machine learning, more GPUs, crypto mining, those buzzwords, I would say, that are synonymous with this new industrial revolution. Um, as you said, they're looking at their lineup and see what they have and tweaking it to coincide or have inventory that will be in demand for this new industrial revolution.
Hmm. No, and this is just one server. You imagine most companies don't buy one server; they always buy multiple, right? So they always buy a full rack. A 4U server and a 44U rack is going to hold. It's going to hold substantial amount of these servers in there. Most if 44U for those you listening, 44U means 44 units. So each unit is a server. So a unit is 1.75 inches. So that's what we call a pizza box, a 1U. This server is 4U. So it's four 4 units of measure for computing. So this is heavy too. This is not something you pick up on your own. You got to get another guy to come help you and put that in there. But as I was saying before, most companies don't buy one server; they buy multiple. So that means they probably whoever's investing into this, like your Division 1 colleges, your scientific institutions that need to do that need fast processing, they're going to be the ones going after things like this. And the market is opening up big time.
That's interesting.
You know, for you tech guys, for you guys who work in IT and stuff like that, you know, certifications like your Server Plus, Network Plus, VMware, those sort of certifications are going to come in handy when you're dealing with big devices like this. Rosie Ray's, what's going on? What were you going to say, Lino?
No, I was saying that breakdown, what you just did, is interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, data centers hold substantial amount of servers. It's not uncommon for a data center to have thousands of servers in them. So when you have something like this going, um, those those scientific institutions, those Division 1 schools like your Yales and what is it? Cal State, MIT. That's this is where some of that money gets spent on big products like this, and you'll probably have two, three, four, five, six racks full of these servers working in tandem, connected to a network switch, probably through fiber, and they're gonna work in sync, and they're gonna crack some numbers. This is big time stuff. So
It's like a lot of power there.
say that again.
I said that sounds like a lot of power.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Companies don't skimp. Not companies. Research institutes don't skimp out. Usually, when they buy something like this, they buy it. Let's say they buy it now, they probably won't launch it probably till the end of the year. Um, they'll probably hold on to this for another 5 years or so before they replace it, because something new is going to come along and it's going to usurp it, right? So that's that's where this comes out. This is where that comes into play. So all right, all right. Next article is from the Washington Post. The science divide. Why do Latino and Black students leave STEM majors at a higher risk or higher rates? Lab classes have always left Shason Briscoe racked with anxiety. The 21-year-old senior at University of California at Davis wasn't concerned about the academic rigor or long hours spent in the classroom. It was the uneasiness he felt when his peers and instructors watched him. Briscoe, who is African American, studied computer engineering at UC Davis, where black students constitute fewer than 3% of students in the program. Often, he is the only black student in the class or in his class. It's like it's like there's a magnifying glass on you, he said. If you don't know the answer to something, you're watched like you have something to prove, and you can't shine on your own merits as much. For years, college administrators have worked to attract minority students like Briscoe, especially Latino and Black students, to science and technology fields. But the retention of those students presents a hurdle. Black and Latino college students transfer or drop out of STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, at higher rates than their white peers, according to a recent study published in the journal Education Researcher. Authors of the study used federal data from National Center for Education Statistics to look at more than 5,600 Black, Latino, and white students who enrolled in college for the first time since 2003-2004 academic year. The data included students enrolled in four-year institutions and those who began at two-year colleges and transferred to four-year schools. The researchers found that students entered the programs at relatively equal numbers. About 19% of the white students declared as STEM majors, compared to 20% of the Latinos and 18% of the Black students. Yet, Black and Latino students change majors at higher rates than their white peers. About 37% of the Latino and 40% of Black STEM students switch majors as undergraduates, compared with 29% of white students. Dropout rates varied among the groups too. About 20% of Latino and 26% of Black STEM majors left their institutions without earning a degree, while 13% of white STEM majors dropped out, according to the study. This trend wasn't evident in the other competitive fields, the reporter found. Among business majors, similar rates of Blacks, Latino, and white students switch majors. Previous studies have suggested this trend without comparing the dropout rates of minority students in STEM to those who drop out of other disciplines, said the lead author of the study, Catherine Regal Crum, an associate professor in the University of Texas at Austin's Department of Curriculum and Instruction. The researchers discovered a strong interest among Black and Latino high school students in pursuing a STEM degree. If there's demonstrated strong interest in STEM among Black and Latino youth, why would you see higher rates for these students? The professor said it's not about interest or academic ability. So so what causes this? The study didn't identify a cause, but researchers who included Yasmin Izariri, an assistant professor of African and African diaspora studies at the University of Texas, and Barbara King, assistant professor of teaching and learning at Florida International University, offered possibilities. Discrimination and bias in science and technology often hinder minority students in academic success, Riga Crum said. Researchers considered, too, that Black and Latino students are more likely to come from low income families and have less access to academic resources that help prepare students for college. Diana Crosser, a 28-year-old senior at University of Washington studying oceanography, is one of the few Latino students in her program. Krauser said feelings of exclusion and microaggressions.
You still there?
Emphasized that she would need friends and mentors to perform well. But it was hard to find a community when Latinos account for 10% of the students in the program, she said. I spent too much time in my head feeling like I didn't belong or wasn't smart enough, that I couldn't concentrate on my work, Krause said. The study findings didn't surprise Darrell Dickerson, Associate Director of the Minority Engineering Program at Purdue University and President of the National Association of Multicultural Engineering Program Advocates. Dickerson said colleges and universities can address the exodus of Black and Latino students by focusing less on recruitment and more on retention. Administrators need to talk to students, figure out what's going on in the classrooms and how they add to exclusion these students feel. Dickerson said, we have to hone in on reasons they are leaving and indirectly address these issues before solving anything else. So um, I wanted to feature this article because I think it's very relevant to a lot of stuff that we talk about on this platform. We talked about cultural intelligence last night. Um, this is a big problem, and one of the main reasons why we do all these tech, all these tech hangouts on Saturdays and Mondays and stuff like that is because it's important to have somebody you can relate to. The article is bang on. Although I would have one caveat with the article is that I think a lot of the dropouts is not coming from the men; it's coming from the women. So a lot of black women do enter into like computer science or something like that, and then they drop out after maybe a few semesters because uh, for various reasons. It could be for lack of inclusion or something to that effect. But I think a lot of that comes from women. I graduated when I did undergrad. I graduated with a majority black male class and one black female. So I know um, I know what they're talking about when they're talking about the microaggressions, some of the discriminatory actions, behavior, feeling excluded and stuff like that. I've talked about that many times on these hangouts that this is a real issue, and it's going to make it hard for you to actually you know, to get ahead in your career or even get into the field for that matter, unless you find other like-minded people, which is why I mentioned NISB a lot, which is the National Society of Black Engineers. You need to find a coalition of people who think just like you and move just like you and have the same ambitions as you. When I was doing undergrad, we kind of formed our own little fraternity or pack, to really advance ourselves. We were doing like tech hangouts on Saturdays in the libraries and stuff like that from 10 to 2. Even after that, they'll leave the school open a little bit longer, and we can stay till about 4 or 5 o'clock. There was a lot of things that we did in order to, stick together so that we did not drop out. Although I did not foresee myself dropping out, but there were quite a few guys who felt doubtful because some of the work was tedious. But the racism is still real. There's still a lot of racism in the tech industry. We've covered articles about Facebook, Google. We just covered that last week or something like that. Many of these these tech firms coming out of Silicon Valley really racist. They're not really they talk about diversity and inclusion, but in reality, their idea of diversity and inclusion just means more white women. Doesn't really mean black and Latino or black and brown, right? So I say all that to say this: um, you guys got to get yourself a mentor if you're trying to get into the tech game. You need that. You need somebody who's already in, who can actually be a navigator for you and actually pass on their experience to you as well and give you some points. Which is why whenever we do these tech hangouts, man, I offer to mentor some of you guys who are listening because you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. I know you have anything you want to add to this.
Yeah, I can see it. I can agree with that. One piece that stood blatantly out to me was a lot of us come from schools that are not that doesn't not act. I won't say access resources as the schools a lot of these predominant white students come from, and when you may be the top of your class in a black school that don't have the same resources, but when you go to these schools that you want to go to, that a lot of graduates or people want to go to that are known for tech and so forth, to get a better education, you find yourself overwhelmed. So you go from a big fish in a fish bowl to a minnow in the ocean. You're lost. Um, I know a lot of black people therefore feel that they need to send their children to the predominantly white schools, but then you're opening them up to the same type of microaggressions, to the same type of self-esteem issues at a younger age. So it's not about ingratiating me. This is my opinion. It's not specifically about ingratiating yourself into the other society. It's about access to the same resources, and that it's funny I say that because that is exactly, specifically, and literally what the equality movement back in the '60s was. It wasn't equality in terms of moving the next door, having a white neighbor. It was having access to the same amount of resources at these white schools do. Now black schools have it. So we see this issue pop up over and over again, and people are attacking it at the wrong angle.
Yeah, one of the pieces that was mentioned in the article was that lack of support at home. We've been talking about this on YouTube for a long time. I've put emphasis behind this. You know, forget about the Black Brain Trust. I put emphasis behind this. Black women raising their sons to be something that they themselves don't value is a big problem. You can't raise your daughter to be independent of the very son that you yourself don't value. So what happens with a lot of guys is that they don't have that immediate support at home, and this is where this term, you know, the educated lame comes from, right? So what I'm saying here is this: there's racism, and then there's our own internal issues as well. We don't really promote our brightest achievers, right? We don't really promote our most academically achieved males, you know, in terms of STEM. You know, we don't see any immediate value in them because they don't adhere to the social norms of the urban environment, right? They're not running around with their pants sagging and things of that nature. So that in itself makes you an outcast within the black community. And then when you get into non-black settings, such as you know these laboratories and these institutions, it also plays a role where you're also being excluded by those people as well. Which is why I said before that black people have an needed an immediate need to stop focusing on STEM now between 2020 and 2050. You got to get it right now because if you don't, you're going to get left out, and these other groups of people are not going to include you, which ties back into why I talk about you know cultural intelligence like we did last night, and I talk about you know having these tech symposiums and stuff like that because other groups of people are not always going to allow you to get in.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Hmm.
Whenever it's funny because I'm a specify black women that
Hmm.
you would when you speak to them about this, and I know people will say, "Well, not all of them." I'm just gonna cast a wholly wide blanket. When you speak to them about this issue, they'll say one thing, but out and about, not thinking about it, and you see this. You know, they may see this guy that is carrying himself well, or not, or and is intelligent and or is in a STEM field. The first thought is to speak negative about them. They
Hmm.
may say they want it, but the actions prove differently. You can say whatever you want. That's okay. That's fine. But your actions are different. And the same with the men. Oh, you know, you have these comedians and sudden Chris Rock. You know, he famous for saying, "Oh, hey, I got a PhD," and you know, the whole joke is, "Oh, can you whip my ass?" You know, and we all know that these things are true. We don't hold our intelligent intelligentsia up to high standards and force our children to be like them. We don't. And then those people have to face the same backlash or, you know, outer racism and that they face. You know, you face the inner racism, but you have face the outer racism. So it's levels that other people don't experience that we have to experience.
Hmm. Yeah, we have to really focus on. See, part of the problem is that I see is that recruiters from these schools are they want that sort of diversity, but then they don't really. You're taking somebody who's 18, 19 years old, or even older, and you're trying to get them into a sector, into the academic sector, where they had not had that sort of upbringing, right? So they didn't have that sort of upbringing, and a lot of the times, white students are kind of groomed at an earlier age. If you look at Silicon Valley, the emergence of Silicon Valley, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all your pioneers of technology as we know it today for computing, they all had a vigorous background of people support, which is how they were able to uh, get their startups out of their garage, and get and really focus on developing and stuff like that. They didn't have all these hurdles that a lot of black people have, or I should say, black and brown people usually have. So we have to create, instead of a school to prison pipeline, we have to create a school to startup pipeline where they don't have to worry about being hired by somebody else. They can actually fund their own start their own operations, and we fund it rather than to keep sending them to through spending 100, $200,000 in these Division One schools. Excuse me. We can actually put 100,000 to 200,000 into their startups. It just makes more sense to do that rather than to put them in debt. At the very least, we're going the return on investment is going to be much higher. I don't know. Mike Rizzi says in the chat, Bill Gates had computers at 8 years old. I don't know about that because computers really did not emerge until he was actually in college. So to say that he had it at 8 years old, there were no computers, in the 1960s.
I don't think he had them at home. He had where he lived, the environment he lived in. He had access to the early models. Um,
Yeah,
he didn't have
mainframes. Yeah, yeah,
right.
access to mainframes, but he didn't have a personal computer at home.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a little different.
but
Um,
that's the same thing as having access to, or the resources that will allow you to have access to.
yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with Lionel. I think he's having a connection issue. But yeah, I think the article was spot on. I think they really went into from a high level. They went into some of these issues that people will face going in, especially now that everyone's starting to go into their own little corners. Um, we have to put more emphasis behind supporting people who are trying to get into STEM. I every weekend, I think since the Brain Trust has started, I kind of put a lot of emphasis behind black people getting into this stuff. Now is a good time. Uh, Let me look at the chat real quick. Vic Shepard says his dad, being a patent attorney, helped him when it came to putting his software out there. Yeah, that's true, but that's the part of the support mechanisms that I'm talking about, right? We don't have that in the black community for the most part. Like Complex Design said, you call your intelligentsia lame. That's no good. Well, there it is right there. It really starts at home too. So you got black people, especially black males, fighting a war on two fronts. They're fighting against a very toxic culture within their own community, and then they are also going up against institutional racism. So we have to come up with sort of frameworks um, that are going to help those who are going against this or going through this actually be able to navigate their way through it. So, all right, let me get to this next one. All right, the next one is from the nextweb.com. IBM's Hyperledger isn't a real blockchain. Here's why. Back in 2016, Enterprise private blockchain was a new, unfamiliar idea. There were not many major players in the private permission blockchain space. A big name was IBM, whose contributions to Hyperledger Fabric was has since brought its tech in front of the likes of Walmart, Nestle, and Aetna. You would think that the prominence in history of IBM's brand would result in wide industry adoption of their blockchain tech, but instead, adoption has been sluggish and most solutions are still in the nascent proof of concept stages. This suggests that many of IBM's enterprise customers are not satisfied. The reason might be fundamentally about IBM's technology. IBM's Hyperledger isn't really a blockchain, and what it does offer is hard to use and difficult to scale. When I worked at JP Morgan in 2016, I led an emerging technology group that researched and vetted blockchains for banks' potential use and strategic investment. At the time, we did in-depth analysis of early versions of Hyperledger, uh, uh, Exoni, Symbiont, Symbiont, Tendermint, Ripple, and Ethereum. My team discovered that the blockchain options in the market were technologically subpar for real enterprise use cases. These tech problems range from having code compiled down to computer bytecode that rendered business logic unreadable and therefore hard to check for auditors, to running so slowly that one couldn't perform helpful business transactions any better than with a traditional database. We used to joke if we were going to go out, if we were going to go in, if we used to joke if we were to go to our bosses at JP Morgan and tell them that you couldn't upgrade your business smart contracts in Ethereum without hard forking the entire network, we would be laughed out of the room. So we came up with a list of questions that we asked at JP Morgan while looking at blockchain vendors' questions. Questions like, what language will this blockchain use? Is the blockchain designed for safety? Can the system easily express complex business rules? Can you upgrade your contracts, i.e., establish a governance regime over any contract? Can the system interact with external blockchains? Can the system add participants, nodes, without drastically slowing down performance? Using these questions as a framework, I believe that blockchain requires architectural elements that IBM's system fundamentally lacks. I'm also not the only one who has since suggested that IBM's performance claims don't add up. While my colleagues and I don't see the numbers game as the only factor in blockchain adoption, we do think it's important to educate people on what blockchain is and is not. The education will hopefully help everyone better understand the landscape of this emerging technology, what blockchain is and isn't. In order to really understand where IBM's blockchain fails to satisfy, we need to look at the very definition of blockchain itself. A blockchain is a decentralized and distributed database, an immutable ledger of events or transactions where truth is determined by a consensus mechanism, such as participants voting to agree on what gets written, so that no central authority arbitrates what is true. IBM's definition of blockchain captures the distributed and immutable elements of blockchain, but conveniently leaves out decentralized consensus. That's because IBM Hyperledger Fabric doesn't require a true consensus mechanism at all. Instead, it suggests using an ordering service called Kafka, but without enforced, democratized, and cryptographically secure voting between participants, you can't really prove whether an agent tampers with the ledger. In effect, IBM's blockchain is nothing more than a glorified timestamp list of entries. IBM's architecture exposes numerous potential vulnerabilities that require a very small amount of malicious coordination. For instance, IBM introduces public key cryptography inside the network with validator signatures, which fundamentally invalidates the proven security model of Bitcoin and other real blockchains, where the network can never immediate immediate a user's externally provided public key signature. This is really in depth, and if you all want to know more about this blockchain, make sure you come to Saturday's Hangout where Lionel is going to talk more in depth about the real uses of blockchain.
Yeah, yeah, I'm use this one at Saturday also. Um, I've been hearing a lot of people that's been in the cryptocurrency space, and they've all been beating the drum of how Hyperledger isn't exactly blockchain. That's not to say that Hyperledger is bad. It's just to say that Hyperledger is not, blockchain. One of the paragraphs in that um, article said that IBM conveniently leaves out the centralization part, and the centralization is important because it allows a consensus on that blockchain. It allows the immutability. It allows you to know that, okay, this is not manipulated by a centralized organization, and in this case, IBM. So I understand what he was getting at um, in that article.
Yeah, and Nagone 11, who is one of our who's our consigliere, had mentioned this last Friday's or last Thursday's hangout cryptos that the blockchain can can influence big Wall Street to actually modify or tamper with the functions of a blockchain network. And this is kind of what he was referring to, the lack of consensus.
Right, right, right. So just to give people, the broader picture of what you just said, if you are JP Morgan Chase and you say, well, we have Hyperledger and um, that's our blockchain, and so we're using that to verify all transactions. Well, there's no consistency protocol saying, okay, all these transactions throughout the day are true. They're not manipulated by JP Morgan Chase. Whereas the Hyperledger fabric, JP Morgan Chase is the centralized authority saying, okay, don't approve that transaction or change those numbers or do this or do that. They're behind the scenes like an octopus tampering with transactions, not letting orders go through, and therefore the consensus protocol negates that.
Mhm. All right, this next article is from Axios.com. How to tell if an exoplanet is habitable. I think we covered this last week, but I'll just go over it again. Figuring out whether a planet is habitable will take more than just understanding its orbit. According to a new study in the journal Science, scientists will also need to study a world's atmosphere, magnetic field, and even geological composition in order to really know if it's capable of hosting life. The big picture. Researchers have been hunting for habitable exoplanets using space and ground-based telescopes for years, but assessing whether a world can support life or not is difficult. What they are looking for. Considerable time is spent focusing on whether a planet is in its star's habitable zone, an orbit in which liquid water can be sustained on the surface, but that alone can't predict whether life will exist. To focus the search for extraterrestrial life, scientists must assess which features of Earth are essential to the development and sustenance of life for billions of years, and whether the formation of such planets is common, the study says. Details. While understanding an exoplanet's atmosphere is a good way to start a hunt for life, scientists will also need to learn more about a planet's composition to see if it's Earth-like. The heart of a habitability lies in the planetary interior. The study says if a world's core is liquid iron like Earth's, it could produce a sufficiently strong magnetic field to shield its surface from incoming harmful radiation, protecting water and possible life on its surface. Even plate tectonics have bearing on habitability because the cycling of a planet's crust helps control its climate. The study notes by having these by having these different variables, we say this is the most likely of all of the planets that have been found. This is this one is the most likely to be habitable or to be most Earth-like. Study co-author Anat Shah of the Carnegie Institution for Science told Axios. So what's next? Although scientists have discovered thousands of exoplanets so far, very few of them are thought to be potentially habitable. However, as more powerful telescopes come online, researchers should gain a better understanding of what secrets these planets may be hiding. This is interesting. I like the approach to actually diagnosing this. So,
Yeah. As humans, we are we need very precise conditions. We need air to breathe. We need a good portion of us need sun. Black slash melanated people, we actually need sun, contrary to a lot of popular belief of black people saying they don't like the sun, but we actually need the sun. We need, we are so used to this particular diet that Earth provides us. And then it pointed out if the inner of this exoplanet is made of particular type of metals, those metals spinning against each other. Uh, Hard metal spinning against a liquid metal produces the atmosphere, well, the magnetic Earth's magnetic field that helps produce the atmosphere. So it's a lot of particular things that goes into play that helps this Earth support human beings. Now, with these exoplanets, they are beyond the solar system, which means they are further away from their stars, suns. Now, I don't specifically know if we can get away with most Earth comforts and not deal with a few that we may not need. But as humans, we are very particular to specific type of conditions. That's why you hear these terms of terraforming Mars or terraforming this planet. It's because we are changing those. It's because the idea of changing those planets to fit our survival needs is necessary. Just like when astronauts go to space, that specific type of gravity is needed. Hello, am I still here?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, it's interesting stuff. And that's not to say that all exoplanets are not inhabitable, but we are only sampling a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of our galaxy and universe, and so all planets are not the same, all solar systems are not the same, all galaxies are not the same. So there are some surprises in store for us.
Hmm. I also think it would be interesting that melanated people, right, black people, people from the continent, would actually be would actually have a higher survival rate if they were outside the planet, right? Because their ability to absorb um, ability to absorb sun or absorb light, right? If you think about white people going to Africa or Europeans going to Africa, they had a very difficult time surviving in those climates. Well, what's to say that those very same people that are surviving in it wouldn't be able to survive somewhere else? We already know if Europeans can't survive in Africa, what makes them think that they can survive anywhere else, right? Especially in places where the conditions are much harsher. So I think that that's an interesting take as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hey, what's going on, Rain and Woman? Um, go to the next one. Next one on the docket. All right, this next one is from FastCompany.com. Even Philip Morris is pivoting to the blockchain. A year ago, pivoting to the blockchain was all the rage. If you were a company in dire straits, all you had to do was gin up a press release explaining that you were investing in block and Bitcoin's underlying technology, and then voila, you had a business model. Camera companies did it, iced tea companies did it, you name it, they all went blockchain. Although the dust has slightly settled since then, it seems like Philip Morris International, the corporation that helped get the entire world addicted to tobacco, is also looking into a blockchain pivot. Nitin Manoharan, Philip Morris's global head of architecture and tech innovation, said at an event in London today, "We want to do public blockchains," reports CoinDesk. What does that mean exactly? According to the executive, the multi-billion-dollar company would use blockchain to track tax stamps that are printed on cigarette boxes. Those those are the printed stickers that are put on the cigarettes to prove that a tax has been paid. Philip Morris reasons that by no longer doing the timestamps in such a slow analog fashion and instead performing the transactions on a digital public ledger, the company could save a much as much $20 million a year. This comes as the tobacco giant clamors to find ways to stay relevant in the 21st century. Altria, the tobacco company that spun off from Philip Morris in 2008, bought 35% stake in e-cigarette manufacturer Juul last year. And Philip Morris has begun offering life insurance for people who quit smoking. This is likely because tobacco use has dropped significantly over the years, according to the CDC, meaning the corporation needs to find both new ways to get people hooked onto as well as ways to cut costs. Blockchain, I guess, is the way to do the latter. Manoharan said that the tax stamps were one of six potential uses for which the company could use the new buzzword technology. These pilots are slated to go live within the next year. Um, I guess there's a use for blockchain everywhere, but I don't think that everybody should use blockchain.
Yeah. Yeah. In this case, they can't do this on a hyperledger because the whole thing with blockchain is to is for it to be public and for you to go to see if track track supply chain. If they were to go, let's say, on Ethereum's, well, if they were to use this on Ethereum's blockchain, then all the information would be on Ethereum's blockchain. So therefore, you would then, like Google, I think I mentioned on Saturday how Google is developing a tech where you can scan for information on Ethereum's blockchain. So let's say you go and buy a pack of cigarettes, and you say, well, is this actually what I am buying? You would then look at that stamp on your phone, go to Google, type it in, or open up your camera and type or scan whatever need to be scanning, and it'll Google pop up and say, per Ethereum's blockchain, this is this is this.
Mm.
If they had an not Ethereum, they had a Hyperledger, then you really can't trust it because who's who, then it's Philip Morris will be the people that is manipulating things. Now you can't say, well, Philip Morris. What do they? gain from selling you bad cigarettes? Well, excuse me. Well, the answer to that is you don't know what nefarious things Philip Morris has done pertaining to that, selling their cigarettes to nefarious acts. But if that was on an Ethereum's blockchain, then well, people are paid to verify these things, um, because of that consensus protocol. It's in the best interest for everyone to keeping everything as true as possible. So that's the difference of the Hyperledger and the blockchain pertaining to Philip Morris. So if they do this on a specific blockchain, a blockchain, then yeah, they can do this. But if they going the IBM Hyperledger Fabric route, then it won't be as robust and it won't be as secure as a blockchain.
All right, let's get to the next one. This next one is from fastcompany.com. Your smartphone wireless signal can be used to forecast the weather. We all have a reasonable understanding of how weather forecasting works. Satellites and ground-based radar monitor weather conditions across the globe, and those conditions are then fed into computer systems that use complex mathematical formulas to predict weather days or weeks out. But there's a startup that says it can predict the weather 60% more accurately than the current models used by government agencies, and it can do so by using this wireless signal of your smartphone and other devices. ClimateCell, based in Boston, was founded in 2015 and says its technology uses the quality of the reception of wireless signals to our devices as a proxy for local weather conditions. Wireless signals can deteriorate based on the factors such as perception and air quality. The strength of these signals can therefore be used to predict weather conditions. The approach makes sense. In principle, other forecasters use proxies such as radar signals, but using information from millions of everyday wireless devices, ClimateCell claims it has a far more fine-grained view of most of the globe than other forecasters get from the existing network of weather the sensors, which range from ground-based devices to satellites. ClimateCell taps into those too. ClimateCell's techniques essentially turns every wireless device in the world into a potential weather detector, which gives it a lot more weather sensors than typical weather forecasting institutions have. For example, ClimateCell says there are little less than 12,000 traditional weather sensing ap- apertures worldwide. This includes 5 satellites, 940 Doppler radar stations, and 11,000 weather stations. But thanks to ClimateCell's technique, there are now over 567 million additional devices on the planet that can help detect the weather, including 4 million wireless networks and 450 million Internet of Things devices, which include smartphones, laptops, and tablets. Basically, anything that has a wireless signal. Um, Me being from Boston, I've heard of this company before. I haven't seen anything uh, substantial come out that actually backs up these claims, but it's interesting to note. So,
Yeah, this is interesting because to I was going to say the word guess, to predict the weather, things change. When you look at the 7-day forecast, you know, um, at that seventh day, it'll say one thing, but as you get closer and closer, it'll say something else because the molecules in the air change. I'm trying to I'm not saying it to be funny, but this is actual factual. The molecules in the air change because of the wind. It's very fickle. So but when you have something that's always being sent through the air with these wireless um, waves, radio waves, or wireless waves, you can then say, as you're going through the air, like you were going to do, test the air, see how it is. So you'll always have a up to date, up to date weather forecast. You know, that's interesting. That is ingenious in my opinion. That idea, put into work. I don't know. I haven't. This is my first time ever seeing it or hearing about it. But if that is put into work, wow. No longer are the days where people joke, well, why listen to the weatherman, blah 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 blah. That well, take a look at your phone, take a look at the weather app. You always have that continuous up to date saying, hey, in another hour, there's a very high potential it's gonna rain, or the day because this is going on, then it's because it is blah blah blah. So this is pretty cool.
Mhm. All right, this next one is from space.com. The Gaia spacecraft was studying stars, but it found something else: three asteroids. The Gaia spacecraft just did a bit of a bonus science. While the European Space Agency ESA mission is designed to measure the positions and velocities of stars, Gaia recently found three asteroids not previously known to astronomers. Asteroids are space rocks left over from early solar system. Investigating these Investigating them shows researchers what the solar system looked like billions of years ago, before the planets formed out of material around the sun. Gaia found these three asteroids in December 2018, and a ground-based telescope at Provence Observatory in France confirmed the find. The three asteroids have unusual paths through space. ESA officials said in a statement, while the sun and the planets orbit in three-dimensional space, the orbits coverage. I'm sorry. The orbits converge in a flat plane, almost like everything is orbiting on top of a solar system-sized plate. Many asteroids orbit in the same place as the sun and the planets, but the paths of the three asteroids are tilted at 15 degrees or more compared with the plane of the solar system. The population of such high inclination asteroids is not well suited. I hate the fact that this video is playing. The population of such a high inclination asteroids is not as well studied as those with less tilted orbits. Since most surveys tend to focus on the plane where their majority of asteroids reside, ESA officials said in a statement, Gaia can readily observe them as it scans the entire sky from its vantage point in space. So it is possible that the satellite will find more such objects in the future and contribute new information to study their properties. When Gaia detects asteroids, astronomers receive information immediately through an online alert system, so they can do follow-up observations. Such observations require a telescope that is at least 1 meter, about 3 feet in diameter. Damn, that sounds similar to the Celestron telescope that Lionel seems to want so badly. So you would need something like that to actually go study some of this stuff. What's your take on this, Lionel, since you sent it in?
Yeah. This article says a number of things. We're always are going to be continuous. That's an interesting cluster of words there. But we're going to continuously be discovering things. Um, yeah, we're going to continuously be discovering things because with these telescopes, when they look at the sky or look at space, the sky, they're not looking at the entire, a broad view, wide angle. They're only looking at a small half grain of rice when they stare off into the galaxy, into the expanse. So
Mhm.
we're always we're always are going to be looking and discovering new things. Now, also in this article, it said that asteroids, and this is just a teaching moment right now, asteroids are nothing more than leftover rock from the beginning of the universe when all the planets were forming. They were, of course, crashing into each other. Some planets were going in one direction, other planets were going in the other direction, and they were crashing into each other, and one direction became the dominant direction. So all of these planets, all these asteroids are the leftover remnants of the forming of the planet. So therefore, it's the same materials, same base minerals, metals, carbon, so forth and so forth that is on Earth, but they're just in abundance out there. Um, Now you have, with this new technology getting better, you're going to have better telescopes. Henceforth, the James Webb telescope, which is going to replace the Hubble, and you're going to have better on Earth telescopes. We just saw how we took a picture of a black hole. That so I guess this is just interesting to me. Them finding two more asteroids, and these asteroids are not going around the planet because it said all the asteroids tend to go around the Earth. I said planet there. Go around the Earth in like a plate. So imagine the plate, the sun is in the middle, and at the rim, all the asteroids is going around the sun on the same plane. With these three asteroids, they're not well, they're not abiding to those quote unquote rules. They're in another, circling the planet around another angle. So this is just interesting to me. And um, I want to tie this into that article we spoke about earlier about the why Black Latinos are not finishing tech, and we mentioned how the the intelligentsia of our communities, we downgrade them. So this is our channel is like an intelligentsia refugee camp, and just how we speak and talk about things. When we talk about things, you can tell that are we are encouraging that intellectual thought.
All right, this next one is from space.com. Again, SpaceX Dragon delivers NASA cargo to space station. Astronauts on the station captured the uncrewed Dragon cargo ship with a robotic arm at 7:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As both spacecraft sailed 254 miles, 408 kilometers above the North Atlantic Ocean, the spacecraft is carrying about 5,500 pounds or 2,495 kilograms uh, of experiments and other supplies for the station's six-person Expedition 59 crew. Welcome to the we welcome to ISS the Dragon spacecraft as part of the SpaceX 17 cargo mission. Station astronaut David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency radioed mission control, making the catch with the station's Canadian-built uh, Canada Arm 2 robot arm. I didn't even know the Canadians had a space agency. As a Canadian, I'm proud every time we use Canada Arm 2 for free flyer capture. St. Jacques added, "My crew and I are proud to be part of this today, representing the dedicated teams, talented people who every day make the seemingly impossible a reality." By 9:32 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, flight controllers on the Earth had used the station's robotic arm to attach Dragon to an available berth on the station so astronauts can begin unloading supplies. I know you sent this in. What's your take on this?
Oh my bad, I was unmuted. Yeah. Canada got a play and has a play in the space station. It's Canada, Japan, Russia, U.S. obviously. A few Europe countries, the ESA, European Space Agency. So it's a few countries that come together to continuously build out the ISS. But this is the second time the uncrewed SpaceX Dragon sent supplies to the ISS. You got the Crew Dragon, which a couple of days ago, I think a week and a half ago, you may have heard in the news how it was an quote unquote anomaly and a whole thing blew up. They were testing it, but then you have the Dragon cargo, which is what this is, that send cargo up to the ISS space station to refill it, and it sent close to 3 tons, 5.5 thousand pounds of cargo, and in that cargo, interestingly, there is for some high school kids that they sent up a science experiment to see how space interact with genes, and they had their project go up there. So the people that's on the ISS are going to um, do the fulfill the experiments. Um, America used to use Russia Soyuz rockets to send up things, but SpaceX is also just taking over that by allowing America to have another way, an American-made company to send up American products to the ISS space station. So I kind of knew the high school kids were doing this, and um, I just thought this interesting because of what it is. SpaceX is getting bigger.
All right, this next one again is from SpaceX, space.com. NASA chief plays down cost of 2024 moon landing. NASA Administrator Jim Bredenstein told Senate appropriators May 1st that while the administration is not yet ready to release a revised budget that accommodates an accelerated human lunar landing program, the cost will not be as high as some rumors. During a hearing of the Commerce, Justice and Science Subcommittee of the Senate Appropriations Committee, members sought to detail about how much it will cost to achieve the goal announced by Vice President Mike Pence March 26th of landing humans on the south pole of the moon in the next few years. Someone in the administration is going to be requesting additional dollars, said Senator Jerry Moran, a Republican of Kansas, chairman of the subcommittee. Do we know what the amount of those additional dollars will be? Bernstein declined to offer a dollar figure, saying that the agency submitted a pretty good proposal to the Office of Management and Budget, which is performing its own review along with the staff of the National Space Council. The goal, he said, is to come up with a unified administration position on how and much additional funding NASA will request. He downplayed reports, though, that claimed NASA would seek an additional $8 billion a year for 5 years. I will tell you that is not accurate. He said it is nowhere near close to the amount, but I don't want to throw out a number until we have gone through the process with OMB and the National Space Council. Speculation has focused on a smaller but still significant increase of about $3 billion to $5 billion a year. That revised a that revised budget proposal is expected to be delivered to Congress in the near future, but Bernstein didn't give a specific date he thought would be ready. All right, so Lionel, you sent this one in again. What's your take on this?
Yeah, per the article, Vice President Mike Pence said that, well, initially the plan to go to the moon was for the U.S. was slated to be 2028. But in my opinion, Mike Pence did make some good comments. He pushed up the dates to 2024. He did say that if we draw this thing out, then more and more political unrest and um, pulling would stall this thing. So him pushing up to 2024 does make sense. I do agree with his point. As far as the budget, you're going to see a lot of politicians moan and groan on that, and it's interesting to me because they'll moan and groan over they're going to moan and groan over space race so much that they're going to put America behind. They're moaning and groaning. Oh, it's going to cost how much? Oh, well, okay. What about SpaceX? What about this? Instead of them saying, okay, well, let's help you all do this because we do need to go to the south side of the moon. We've seen China, which is um, a uh, a superpower, land a rocket on the dark side of the moon. Japan is doing this thing. The ESA is doing this thing. Russia's going to do their thing, and as America, you can't sit around and pull it and red tape everything. So it's good that um, Mike Pence moved up the dates to 2024, and it's good that we have a couple companies out there that are pushing the space race and getting back to the moon or to the moon, depending on the person.
All right, this next one is from space.com. New Shepard spacecraft test flight in photos. Blue Origin aced the 11th test flight of its new Shepard spacecraft, a reusable rocket capsule combo with a picture perfect launch and double landing at the company's West Texas site on May 2nd, 2019. The new Shepard rocket lifted off on the NS-11 mission at 9:35 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to send the uncrewed capsule to suborbital space. It returned to Earth after about 7.5 minutes of flight to stick an upright landing on the plains of Texas. And the capsule followed with the parachute landing about 3 minutes later. It carried 38 experiments on the flight, including 9 experiments for NASA.
Okay, I can. Yeah. Did you want to go through the pictures, or I'll just talk about it?
You can go ahead.
All right. So SpaceX isn't the only player in town. You have Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin. This is their New Horizons spacecraft. It also lands itself, just like SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket. Um, it says suborbital because SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket delivers things to the ISS and everything, hmm, which is up there. It's in the thermosphere, the mesosphere type of area, which is these high layers, which are hundreds of miles above the Earth. When you up there, then you are in an orbital trajectory, which means you can circle the Earth. Suborbital is you just going straight up, then come back down. So that's what this mission was, to test out their New Horizons uncrewed spaceship, well, not spaceship, spacecraft. So what they did, is in Texas, and the mission went well. It went up. You had main engine cut off, what they were called MECO. Um, then MECO happened. The separation of I'm lost for words. The top. Oh God, the cargo separation of the cargo. Once that happened, the main engine came back down to Earth. It the How it comes back down to Earth is it guides itself. I forgot what the fins are called, but it guides itself in a straight pattern, straight up and down pattern, so it's not flailing around, spinning around, and it uses thrusters to straighten itself. At a certain point on its way to Earth, that main engine reignites in order to slow down its trajectory. And this is somewhat the same way SpaceX does, but as the New Horizon Blue Origin's New Horizon engine reignites itself and slow down its trajectory back down to Earth, because you have all that gravity pulling the rocket back down to Earth. So it slows itself, and still reorienting itself. It has a um, I'm losing my words tonight. Still, it knows where it's at because of satellites and everything. So it's going back to the point in which it took off. And as it takes off, as it comes back down to Earth, the legs pop out. And as it gets closer to the ground, the engine roars in order to slow down its trajectory back to Earth and to stick the landing. Meanwhile, the cargo part of the rocket, the parachutes popped out. It's three parachutes that is just coming back down to the Earth, and it just landed. That's what this was all about, to test the whole mechanism, test everything.
All right, this next one is from CoinDesk.com. FCC eyes blockchain to better manage scarce wireless spectrums. The Federal Communications Commission could one day use blockchain to monitor and manage wireless spectrums to support the growing requirements of the Internet of Things, IoT. With Juniper Research predicting that there will be 50 billion connected IoT devices and sensors by 2022, the agency is keen to finding a way to manage the required radio frequencies more efficiently and transparently. As reported by Computer World on Monday, FCC Commissioner Jessica Rosso told an MIT conference last week that a future with such numbers of IoT devices will need a real-time market instead of today's clunky licensing system. We have this registry from all of these licenses, but on a day-to-day basis, we don't actually know with a great clarity what's being used and what's not being used. So if you put this on a public blockchain, you have this record of where demand is for what airwaves. Currently, spectrums are auctioned off one at a time in process that is slow, complex to manage, and expensive, according to the commissioner. Spectrums are also in short supply, with one option being to share them, with the FCC managing the rights to use different bands at different levels of priority. One idea touted in recent years is to build a marketplace that would issue permissions dynamically using AI, according to Computer World. If that can be achieved, said Russell, it would bring it would bring in new efficiencies and move the system from of one of scarcity to one that can manage relative abundance. Um, this is very important because the fractionalization of spectrums is starting to happen now. We just saw in Italy a few months ago that they started auctioning off their 5G spectrum already. And guess who's going to end up buying that? You can bet your bottom dollar that Huawei and ZTE will be in on that. So all of these sort of frequencies that are, or I should say, radio spectrums that are being moved around and left over, especially your analog white spaces. Analog white spaces come from broadcast TV that can be used for pushing data. So you have all of these radio spectrums that are available that are not being used, such as your analog white spaces, and then you have your um, your cellular and your Wi-Fi high-powered ones, such as your municipal wireless systems for governments. All of these things have to be managed, and they're not being managed. Truth be told, they're pretty lousy at actually managing these things. So I think this is a very good use of blockchain for the most part.
Yeah, I agree. We all know that IoT is coming out, and there's going to be billions of devices. Every there billions of people on Earth, and now you have people with connected appliances, connected devices, and now you really have to have specific IP addresses and, like you mentioned, the fractionalization of that bandwidth in order to be able to sustain all of that and not clog up the say again.
Not bandwidth, spectrum. Bandwidth is a payload.
Yeah, the spectrum, those spectrum highways.
All right, this next one is from ArsTechnica.com. Bosch teams up with PowerCell to bring down the cost of fuel cells. The company is also working on solid oxide fuel cells for stationary applications. On Monday, automotive parts supplier Bosch announced that it would be partnering with a company called PowerCell to manufacture fuel cells for commercial and passenger vehicles. Currently, there's not a huge market for hydrogen fuel cells, but a number of automotive leaders believe that which can be transformed into electrical energy through fuel cell stacks, will play a significant role in the transportation of the future if we want to curb carbon emissions in the face of climate change. PowerCell, a Sweden-based company spun off from Volvo in 2008, has been building a hydrogen fuel cell stacks for a decade. Bosch has also worked to supply makers of fuel cell stacks. Together, the companies will develop a polymer electrolyte membrane (PEM) fuel cell stack for mass production by 2022. Currently, PowerCell manually produces its fuel cells, and it hopes to move to semi-automatic manufacturing as a result of its partnership with Bosch. The joint development work will take the form of regular consultations among experts. Bosch spokesman Tim Weiland told ours. He added that the two companies have no plans for a joint venture or a shared factory. When development is complete in 2022, Bosch will market the product to truck and passenger vehicle manufacturers, and PowerCell will market the product to other industries, according to Weiland. In the fuel cell domain, Bosch already has a strong hand, and the alliance with PowerCells makes it even stronger. Stefan Hartung, a member of the Bosch Board of Management, said in a statement, commercializing technology is one of our strengths. Robert Bosch GmbH is a massive corporation with more than 450 subsidiaries and local companies that provide a wide range of products and services to vehicle manufacturers, from component parts to software. A branch of the company even wrote some of the code that helped Volkswagen and Audi diesel vehicles cheat their emissions tests. This means that this means the company has been involved in a little bit of everything. Fuel cells for vehicles included. Bosch's most notable contribution to fuel cell deployment may be in its partnership with the hydrogen truck startup Nikola Motor Company. Bosch has a team of engineers at Nikola's Arizona headquarters working to get the company's truck over the production finish line. Um, this is going to be interesting going forward because fuel cells, for the most part, are so expensive. I know Toyota and BMW were working on this years ago. I believe Honda had a fuel cell vehicle as well. I think maybe they were the first ones, and it didn't really go anywhere. I think it was like based on the Honda Civic or something like that. Toyota's and BMW's partnership was really about that as well. My position on fuel cells is that it works better the bigger the application. So if it's on a semi truck, an 18 wheeler, it makes a lot of sense. If it's on something like a cargo ship or something to that effect, it makes a lot of sense because there's such a wide variety of because the application is so scaled out that it allows more greater width of application because now you can run the cost down from a supply chain perspective. The more the bigger the early adopter, the cheaper it's going to be the next time around. So you need bigger applications to actually examine um, the validity of the product itself. So how fuel cells actually need a very big application, and one of the big applications that can actually sustain something like this would probably be something uh, like airplanes, passenger airplanes, and things like that. Big applications. You have to think big in these in regards to this. So
That'll be a nice application. These Boeing and Airbus airplanes that travel in the high stratosphere across
mhm,
the globe. I wonder if that will allow them to take longer flights with these
mhm,
with these fuel cells.
mhm.
And that's pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, you would need something like that. Now, I don't know how well it will work in space, but I know from a ground-based perspective, it only works well when the application is much scalable. Cars are not really scalable in that regard, right? So they kind of one size fits all for the most part. So once it's designed the way it is, that's pretty much what you're going to get out of it. So you have a few fuel cells, a few being a couple, two or three inside this subcompact vehicle. Yeah, you may travel a few more hundred miles than, let's say, electric battery. But what happens when you need to um, test it on a bigger application, such as the 18 wheeler, things of that nature, where you can shove those fuel cells into the trailer itself, and you can get maximum mileage out of it. That's where the real test is going to come from.
Now, what about public transportation? These, making, well, I won't say make a bus larger, but these buses that are continuously on the street, they're
Mhm.
big, and as people crowd on them, they're obviously going to be pulling a lot of weight. It seems like it would be
Yeah,
help.
yeah, that would help too. But that's one application, right? Because they're 50 footers, right? The biggest passenger buses are about 50 feet. So most tractor trailers are about 53 feet, if not a little bit more. When you take that same fuel cell and you apply it to a mass transit train, a train could be a mile long. So you think about Amtrak, you think about uh, um, I forget the nail in the rail system now. Um, but you think about those applications, uh, those things are a half a mile long, or if not a whole mile long, and you start adding fuel cells to those locomotives and the rest of the cargo, and not the cargo, but the actual train itself.
The caboose
That
and all
becomes
that.
that becomes well, it's not a caboose. It's actually I forget the term that they use for them. It's a cart, basically a cart. But once you add those fuel cells to those carts and stuff like that, and the locomotives, that becomes a game changer because now that I don't know if anybody's ever actually looked at a train trying to take off at full load. That's there's a whole lot of smog that comes out of those diesel trains, and because of that, if you're trying to fight climate change, you're trying to uh, switch to a more alternative energy. This would probably be the best solution.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, because those freight trains are very long, half mile to a mile long. And I'm also thinking about these trucks that carry most of the things that's sold in America on trucks.
Hmm.
Hmm. All right. Now I see the bigger picture.
Mhm. Now that this is something I might have to look into from a investment perspective because fuel cells are far few in between, but the technology is going to have very long going to have longevity in the market. You'll probably see this for the next 50, 60, 70 years.
I like the airplane notion because a lot can get done there, and I do agree with you with the freight systems and not the delivery, but the hauling. That seems like because those things you have a lot of CO2 output, the smog and everything because the way they work.
Mhm.
Well, the energy they use, the coal and everything, and the gas, that can really cut down because they're always going. Something always getting hauled or transported, and they're always on the road. So that
Mhm.
can cut down a lot of these greenhouse gases.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the batteries that are coming out of EV cars like Teslas and so on and so forth are being put inside of people's homes now. So you've seen the recycling aspect of going from vehicle application to home application. Well, how do you how do you leverage that same application of putting these fuel cells inside of a vehicle, such as a train, such as a plane, and such as a 18 wheeler, to placing it inside of homes, right? And when I say homes, I'm thinking about Africa, right, where you have villages that are completely disconnected from any sort of immediate grids, because you cannot electrify the whole continent. It's just not possible. You would have to utilize renewable energies as well as leverage new technologies such as fuel cell. That's where a lot of that is going to come in.
Um,
JSBUTB. Go ahead.
yeah, I just saw that. No, I was just gonna read her comment, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
She said that she did a grant paper on the possibilities of fuel cells back in '98. My, how far we have come.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I see nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I see nothing wrong with that. I mean, fuel cells. I think fuel cells' problem is adoption, not so much as the technology itself. So, how do you convince a company to actually jump on board? I mean, I think Honda tried it. Let me actually pull my laptop up and see if I can pull up these examples. Yeah, the Clarity. That's the name of it. So let me share my screen real quick. Yeah, this is the Honda that I was referring to, the Clarity. It's an ugly vehicle, but it's definitely something to take note of because let me see if I can find the range on it. If it looked like an NSX, then I would actually be interested in purchasing something like this. But I'm not that much of a equilibrial liberal to be investing into something like this. I'm trying to find what the okay, let me see.
Just did a Google search. It said 89 miles battery only. Honda Clarity.
Yeah, it's because it's a hybrid too. Not really not really impressive. It's one of those things that they have to come up with a better application. Maybe they could have used something like this on a it actually says 360 miles EPA, so combined. So it's a hybrid. But 360 is fine, but you know a Tesla can get up to 300. A Model S can get up to 300. You have to kind of ask yourself: is the complexity of a fuel cell really worth it in comparison to a Tesla EV, right?
Yeah, yeah. And Tesla's getting better with their batteries also.
Yeah, because they're so invested into it, right? They have to be.
Hmm.
What are they saying in the chat? All right, this this article was from July 2nd, 2015. BMW begins test of fuel cell car developed with Toyota. So this is what I was mentioning earlier, that um, companies are working on fuel cell technology, and they've been working on it for quite some time. And BMW being in partnership with them just makes this all the more confirmed. So BMW will test a vehicle powered by hydrogen fuel cells developed with Toyota for the first time on public roads this month as the German automaker looks to expand clean car offerings after rolling out the battery-powered i3 in 2013. The company plans a technically mature, customer-ready vehicle sometime after 2020. So right around this time, right now, is when they're thinking about pushing all these fuel cell vehicles out there.
Mm. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of battery powered vehicles on the road, and they're gonna look nice, where people actually want to buy them.
Well, it yeah they would have to look like something that a fifth grader didn't draw because that's what the Clarity looks like. Honda Clarity looks terrible. I don't know
Yeah, that back
who
look
came up with that.
horrible.
I don't know what they
Yeah,
were thinking.
like that Nissan Leaf. You really have to be dedicated to that game. That electric game, because the Nissan Leaf, the Chevy Volt, that clearly it looks like the stereotypical, oh, this is a car ran off garbage, something like that, like you see in these movies. You got to make something people actually want to drive.
Hmm. Let me finish reading this real quick. Fuel cells, which have provided spacecraft with power since the 1960s, produce electricity by reacting hydrogen with air, enabling longer travel than battery-driven vehicles while emitting only water vapor rather than carbon dioxide. Disadvantages include a lack of service station equipped to replenish the hydrogen gas and the high cost of rare metals needed for the technology. So this is what I was mentioning earlier, that you need a big application like a spacecraft, like a plane, like a Boeing 737 or something like that, or a jumbo jet, a Dreamliner, a cargo ship, right? A cargo ship that holds 5,000 shipping containers. You need something like that to actually make it more worth your while. Um, and the only downside is the lack of service stations. So I we've talked about this many times before, that the fourth industrialization is going to be about infrastructure, right? So infrastructure is going to be key. And if reading this last this last sentence, it says that the disadvantages include a lack of service stations equipped to replenish the hydrogen gas. Well, that's a part of infrastructure. That's what they're talking about here.
Okay. And those cargo ships, they emit just as much gas as uh, CO2 gases as like thousands of cars or something like that, the equivalent.
Mhm.
So that's
Because they move so much slowly too.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, they have a very slow pace. But when you Rolls Royce, as much as people want to laugh, Rolls Royce actually is involved in the shipping game. So they make engines and stuff like that, and components for shipping, cargo ships. Same thing for planes and whatnot. Rolls Royce is heavily invested into all this stuff. So when you think about uh, where these applications can go, they have to go into more scalable platforms, such as cargo ships, such as spacecraft, such as
Hmm.
the shipping industry. Small vehicles like the Honda Clarity and the BMW and Toyota. That's not really a really viable platform for fuel cells at this moment. In order for fuel cells to advance, they need a more scalable application, such as what I mentioned before. So that's the point that I was trying to really drive home.
Yeah, Rolls Royce make engines for SpaceX too. Their Merlin 1D rockets. Those made by Rolls Royce,
Hmm.
and
Let me see.
trying to escape Earth's gravity. That's a lot of energy.
Yes.
So if you don't want to use, like, fuel rockets, if forever one day they make rockets that's powered by these alternative fuels, then That's one big scale.
Hmm. Uh, I'm just reading this next one from Reuters. Uh, Ford says fuel cell venture with Daimler will close. So BMW working with Toyota, Ford working with Mercedes on fuel cell as well. So you're seeing all this stuff starting to come out now. And the last paragraph kind of hints at this because it says Ford will take fuel cell stack development in house as well as leverage the supply base and close Automotive Fuel Cell Corporation, Cooperation Corp, by summer 2018. The Dearborn, Michigan automaker said both companies will continue to explore ways to cooperate on developing fuel cell stack modules. Everyone's trying to work together on this because this is this is the next step beyond what Tesla is doing. Tesla has to put a lot of effort into what they're doing for their battery technology, the lithium polymer battery technology, because they have to. It's the only way that the vehicles actually run. So they're in competition with some of the other auto manufacturers who are focused on uh, clean energy solutions. In 2018, this article was written. This article was written in 2018. So again, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. This is where fourth industrialization is taking place. Uh, this sort of time frame, this sort of 3-year, 5-year time frame. If you're going back 2018 and you're forward and you're going forward 3 years, you're going forward 5 years. That's what they're talking about.
Mm, okay.
Let me grab a couple of comments from the chat. Rainy Woman says, so Tesla could potentially be a better car than my endured Honda. Depends on which Honda you have. Depends on which Honda you have. Because when you really think about it, a brand new Tesla gets 300 miles to the charge. Actually, let me make sure that this is confirmed with the.
It's more like 289, 290, but the average. That's the average, but the rounded up figure.
What are you saying?
I think it's 289, 290, but if you get this P100D, it drops down to 270. But it's around 289, 290 for the say monster, for the Tesla Model S and everything. It's like 289.
No, the Model S says right here 370 miles to the range. So to the charge. So when you take into consideration, Rain and Woman, um, what kind of Honda you're talking about? A Honda, like a Honda Civic, uh, it may get at best maybe 400 miles to the charge. I mean, not to the charge, to the tank. A Tesla Model S, as we're looking at right here, is 370 miles to the charge. So, taking into consideration where your values are, right? It's hard not to look at Tesla and many of these other EV platforms. That car actually looks really good on the screen. Um, it's hard not to take them seriously now because they get the same range as your gas car. So you're starting to wonder now, well, if you have an electric car that gets the same amount of range as my gas car, what's the point, right? What's the point in having gas? Um, uh, Before, the whole point of keeping the gas car was because it was more fuel efficient uh, per mile, right? Before a Tesla only got about 183 miles to the charge. Well, now they're getting 370, close to 400 miles to the charge. You got to start looking at the math and saying, well, if my Honda only gets 350 to 400 miles to the tank, and this Tesla is getting 370 miles to the charge, I may very well trade in my next vehicle for a Tesla. The only reason I personally haven't bought a Tesla is because they have not come up with a coupe. I want a roadster. Like I'm a coupe kind of guy. Like all my cars have been two door sporty hatches. So if they made the Model S in a two door liftback version, I would be all over it. But they just haven't not made it. They haven't come out with a roaster yet. Or actually, they have.
Well, that's not.
Yeah.
I don't
See,
think. Yeah,
this gets 620 miles to the charge.
yeah. I think that's coming out soon. I don't think it's out yet.
No, it's not out yet.
Yeah.
It's not out
Golly.
yet. But
And 0 to 60 is 1.9 seconds. Ha-
yeah.
have you seen the inside of that? Oh, it looks so sexy.
Not not yeah, not any recent pictures. I can look at it right here though. This is an
You see
artist
that
rendering.
screen? Okay. Yeah, that center console. Oh man.
Hmm.
And then the back, then you got the hole in the back of that screen that you can maybe plug some stuff in. It don't really show a straight on shot, but it looks nice.
Hmm. Yeah. But again, it gets allegedly it gets 620 miles to the charge. I don't know any gas car right now that can get 600 miles at all. My Volkswagen gets 395 miles to the tank, and it's a gas car. So and it's fairly efficient for what it is. So it's hard to justify not going with an electric vehicle, which is why I've put off buying a vehicle for the last few years because I've been waiting to see what Tesla does, what BMW does. I like the BMW i8. Um, I'm just not feeling the fake sounds that it does, and I think that's a big turnoff to me. But what are these other manufacturers doing?
I like the Model S and the Model X. Those I like the way they look, and I've seen the i8. It's nice. I just like the S and the X.
You like the S and the X?
Yeah.
That sounds that sounds pretty promiscuous of you. You like the S and the X, so.
Yeah, I know. Like they, Tesla, Elon must think he's slick. That whole lineup spells sexy, but I, I don't like the three because it's like a, you know, smaller version of the X, and the Model Y is a smaller version of the X. If it, that's how I'm looking at it. It may be true or not true. I do admit that roaster looks nice. It's quiet. It's that 0 to 60 is 1.9 seconds, well below the three second mark. The G forces that when you step on that gas, the G
Mhm.
forces send you back and up in the seat. I just like I agree with you. That Model S looks sexy on that screen, and the Model I wasn't into the Model X, but then as I saw more and more pictures of it, I saw a few people customize it with the Chrome delete and everything, but it just looks nice. Got the Falcon wing doors in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm not a car person. You know,
really.
the technicals, the technicals of when you in a complex talk about cars, I cannot hang, but these cars look nice.
Did we lose Lionel?
Say again.
You got cut off on the last 5 seconds. I'm not sure
Oh,
what happened.
oh no, I was saying those cars look nice.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I've been a big fan of the i8, but the i8, it does a lot of synthetic noises that doesn't make any sense to me. Um, I also been a big fan of the NSX. I'm not a big fan of the price, but I'm a big fan of the NSX. These are all next generation sort of technology inside these cars. I'd be interested to see what happens in the next few months or so, because I know the price comes down a lot on the i8s and the NSXs and some of the Teslas, because people don't want them used; they want them new. So that's why the price comes down a lot on them. Nobody really wants them all used up. So no, there won't be no step on the gas. It's clutch your pearls, because you're about to get whiplash with that 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. That's roller coaster speed.
Yeah, a lot of people won't be expecting that. And I like the way that Tesla, you download the app, you can use your phone as your key. You lose your phone, then they have the key card that's the size of like a business card or a credit card. I like that whole progressive thinking. You don't put the keys into the ignition and all that. I like that. And it's a nice, the dashboard is nice, clean, minimalistic. I've heard people say because they don't have to spend money on all of that, they can spend just put a little bit more money into the leather of the seats and things. So I like that. I like those things.
Yeah, Teslas are very customizable because people have preferences, right? They're very customizable. They're very comparable to that of a uh, high-end Mercedes or high-end what do you call those? BMWs and stuff like that. So, and they
Hmm.
actually outsell BMW and Mercedes at that level. So, people are willing to spend $100,000 on a Tesla because it's not seen as a car; it's seen more as a tech gadget, right? It's like a big ass iPhone or something. They just have to have it. So, the people who are buying it know exactly what they're getting themselves into, and it makes it easier on the resale because you spec your car really nice. Once you go ahead and trade that in, you take that depreciation hit. I'm gonna come in there and scoop it up on the used market. So
It seems like those P100Ds keep their resale value better than the regular baseline versions.
oh yeah, because they're at the pinnacle of performance, right? So the P100D is like the equivalent of like a Chrysler, not a Chrysler, a Dodge Hellcat, right? A Charger,
Really?
Dodge Charger Hellcat. Yeah, it's the equivalent. So that's the electric equivalent of it. A P100D is like a monster. So people are willing to spend big bucks on that, just to be at the top of the range. And I guess it makes sense. If you're going to get an electric car, you might as well get the best thing you can get. What's the point in buying something cheap? Because it's a tech gadget first before it's a car second. So people who buy those are the same people who buy an iPhone X, right, or XR or something like that. The no buttons on it and stuff like that, or the same guy who buys a MacBook Air.
Mm. Now, one thing I look at videos on people driving their Teslas. Of course, it's quiet, but you can hear the wind blowing against the car. I'm surprised that they haven't put in like a noise cancellation that'll match the decibels of the wind that's hitting against the the car and match that decibel in order to cancel it out.
Hmm.
I'm surprised they haven't done that because those Teslas are, well, electric cars in general are very quiet. The ones that don't put in that purposely audible noise of the car engine going, they're very quiet.
Well, some of the discussion that has been going around the last couple of years is adding speakers to the outside of the car so that people can actually hear them coming.
Yeah, I've heard
If,
that.
if,
They did that to the Leaf years ago, didn't they?
I'm not sure about that, but I do know that Yeah, if you're one of those pedestrians who wears the white earbuds in your ear and you're walking, not paying attention, you may very well get hit by a car because the car's electric and there's no actual rumble of an exhaust system, right? And if you're not paying attention, you're mad aloof. Uh, you're definitely going to get hit by a car. I know in Boston that happens quite often on Calm Ave, around Boston University and those places. A lot of your pale-faced students are walking around, not paying attention, usually texting and walking or something stupid, and an electric car comes by and then they clips them, at their feet. To me, if you're not paying attention, I don't think it should be the driver's fault. I think that you know, drivers should not be liable for that. I think that the pedestrians should be held accountable for jaywalking, if anything.
Mm, mm. Yeah, but I've heard that argument before.
Well, yeah, yeah. I definitely think that there's a lot of things that needs to be done with the electric car industry. You can't just have a whole bunch of quiet vehicles traveling up and down the street and nobody can really tell what's going on, unless you start, unless there's like some form of sensor that when a person does step in front of it, not only does the car stop, but it actually beeps the horn. Like
Mm,
all of that should come in sequence. All of that should come in sequence because a human being is fallible, right? It's just a matter of human nature. It's not uncommon that a person who may be intoxicated does step in front of a vehicle that they not only did they not see, but they didn't even hear.
hmm. Marcus in the chat, a brother who started a channel. His name is Rich Rebuilds, Rich Benoit. Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, he's
I
from
heard,
Boston.
yeah, I heard he was on a Joe Rogan podcast a couple of days ago, a week ago. He was actually a cool guy. He's opened up. He quit his job and he's opening up his new a garage because not too many people know how to fix Teslas, and those garages that are authorized to fix Teslas, they you can't just bring it in. You gotta maybe wait a week and then wait another couple of weeks in order to get it back. So he's opening up a garage, and he talk in that podcast. He really goes through how he fixed up the Tesla and the things he went through.
Yeah, I've only seen him once in person. I haven't had a chance to actually have a deep dialogue with him, but one of these days I'll see if I can get him on the brain trust. I know Cars and Coffee starts this month. Actually, it starts. I think it's this Saturday. I don't know if I'll be there for that one, but I know I'll be there for one in June. So I'll see if I can link up with him. But yeah, thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button as you leave if you have not already done so, and share the video if possible. Um, and just as an FYI, we are Manosphere 3.0 compliant. And if you want uh, some mentorship as well in terms of getting involved in the IT space, uh, drop your email in the chat or after the stream ends and put it in the comment section and let us know. And one of us would actually assist you. With that being said, I know you have any closing thoughts.
Thanks for y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.